Welcome to Your American Dream. I'm Manisha Jennings, and today we're exploring how finding your voice can transform not just your business, but your entire life with Marta Spirk, whose journey from Brazilian linguist to American speaking coach proves that our greatest challenges often lead to our most powerful messages. Welcome, Marta. So good to have you on my show.
Thank you so much. Love that intro. I'm excited.
So Marta came here from Brazil, and you have 20 years of experience with language,
Mhm.
talking in TED Talk, and all of it. So tell us your journey from Brazil to America and all your speaking skills.
Yes. Well, everything really started from a young age. I was very obsessed with the American language. I mean, the American culture and the English language. There's huge influence in Brazil, as it is with many other countries, of music, movies. But I really took it a step further. I was very obsessed, and back in the day, you couldn't research lyrics on online. So I would just listen to things, pause it, try to write it down, try to figure it out. I really, really loved it. But what took it a step further for me was being involved in the church. My mom is a pastor, and she started hosting American ministers. And so we grew closer to the culture. We started visiting America more often, and I was very involved in helping the church host these ministers, and even with interpretation. So I began my translation and interpretation journey in church. And it was one of those things where my profession kind of found me, like I didn't have to think twice once I went to college. It was just a given. It's what I liked and what I enjoyed doing. So I was very comfortable being in front of people. I just grew up doing that, and speaking. And then fast forward, I eventually married my American husband, moved to the US, and I met him in church. So it was all, through that environment. But especially after having kids, which it was a huge surprise to have triplets in 2016, I started feeling the need to get into mentorship, which in being a teacher for so long, I started teaching English when I was 14 to friends from school and from church. Um, I had been doing it for a long time, teaching and encouraging and helping, but the subject matter was always languages. I learned French as well, so I would teach French, English, and then when I was living in America, I was teaching Portuguese as well. But I was like, I don't want to do languages anymore. I want to do something deeper. And I think it came also from the struggle of becoming a mom and needing that encouragement myself. So what ended up happening is that I got into coaching, and it was life coaching initially, but eventually it turned into encouraging women to share their voice, especially women entrepreneurs, because that's what I had been doing my whole life. And then there's a whole aspect of music as well that we can talk about, but that's the summarized version.
Lovely. I love that. So that's very amazing that you grew up in the church and, these opportunities presented themselves and you did not hesitate. So, how did your background in linguistics help you adjust to a new country?
So it's interesting because when I moved after I got married, I actually started going through a master's program. That was part of my parents' compromise. They're like, this is not going to work because you barely know this person. So get something out of it. When you come home 6 months later, that's, their reasoning. uh, at least you get a degree or something. So they actually helped me through my master's. And it was interesting how I knew the language. I mean, I'd been studying it for years and I was fluent, but then being in the graduate atmosphere, having to read very hard texts and then sharing your opinions in front of the class when other people were, sounded so eloquent, I kind of felt out of place. I'm not going to lie. I remember coming home a few days crying to my husband and being like, this was hard. I read the material, but I guess I need to take my time and really study it further. So it was a little bit of a shock then, because, especially linguistics, there was a lot of philosophical stuff, which I love, but it went a little bit deeper, when you're talking about rhetoric and all these things, and I don't even know how to pronounce some of the words because I'd never encountered them before. So it was challenging. And then there was the other piece of the cultural adjustment. Again, I was not, unfamiliar with the culture. I'd been visiting for many years, but visiting is not the same as living.
Yeah.
like, finding ingredients in the grocery store and cooking meals. So that was a little bit harder, especially with my husband, because he had certain expectations of what I was going to make. Like, you're Brazilian, you can make amazing rice and beans. Not really. And, so there was a little bit of an adjustment there. Um, and then the other piece was friendships, because he had his friends. The majority of his friends were not married, and were even single, didn't have girlfriends. So I had some people from my graduate program, but again, it's not like living in dorms and developing these friendships. Everybody has their own life because they're grown-ups now. So it felt lonely. I remember I spent lots of time with my dog. That was one of the things that my husband did, is he got a dog as soon as right before we got married. He got a dog so that when I would move there, I would have a friend. And sure enough, he was my little buddy and friend. But yeah, it was an adjustment socially too.
Yes, yes. So, like you said, visiting is so much different from living here. What were the first reactions that you had after moving to this country?
What was interesting is that obviously things have changed throughout the years, but living in Brazil, going to like McDonald's or some fast food was a luxury reserved for weekends. Growing up, it's like, oh, it's Saturday or it's Sunday. I remember we would watch TV Sunday nights eating McDonald's, and that was like the glorious moment because we would eat rice and beans and healthy things that were cooked at home.
Mhm.
But then I realized I could eat whatever I wanted at any time, which is probably the realization that teenage kids experience when they go to college here in America. But to me, it was I left my parents' home. It's a very, typical Latino culture. When I was 23, I had never lived by myself before, and now not only can I eat whatever I want, I actually have to do my laundry and all these other things. So that was an adjustment too of like, wow, things don't just get done on their own. Wow. It was a lot easier when people did it for me, but also there's the freedom of if I want to leave my shoes wherever in the house, I can because it's my house and my mom's not going to be complaining about it. But then I'd complain about my husband, so
I totally understand that because when I moved from my parents' home straight away to US and I was 28. So
you
yes, things don't get done. You gotta do them.
gotta do it yourself.
Yeah. So you did mention having triplets. Tell
Hmm.
us about that journey and how building a business with triplets. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so it was a huge shock. I had some like hormonal infertility issues initially, and we went through a hormonal treatment. Actually, it was like the first stage of you need some adjustments because your body's not doing it on its own. And within a month, I was pregnant and with triplets. So it was a huge jump, not something I was expecting. Because I know if you're going through a treatment for several years, people go on journeys that last a long time. They're kind of expecting and they're welcoming anything because they're waiting for so long. you know Obviously I was waiting and I was wanting it, but I had no plans or even the thought that I would have two, let alone three at the same time. So that was a huge shock, and in many ways I had felt like it was going to keep me from doing the things that I wanted to do. Because in my mind, it's like I'm going to have a child for about a year or so. I'm going to take a break from all of the things and then I will go back. But then when the reality really sank in of having three, it was a lot of grieving for me of the plans that I had for myself. So that was tough. And that's where I believe the whole concept of personal development and coaching came into place because I needed that encouragement. And so by sharing that with people, I realized that I was encouraging myself and others. And the fact that it was coming from somebody that was living a challenging situation, I think people appreciated that even more because they were like, how can you be doing this when you have this? But that was the reason why I was doing it. So I actually started my business with network marketing because that was all the buzz back in 2016. There were that's all you could see on your feed on social media. And I joined one of the companies, and eventually I realized I don't want to be selling somebody else's product. I'd rather create something of my own, obviously, because then I started seeing other people creating their own things, right? It wasn't something that I just came up with, I was kind of following what I was seeing as possibilities. Oh, some people have their own courses and programs. And so it was a long, hard road of tweaking, figuring it out, tearing my hair out at times, especially when it comes to comparison, because then I would see other people, typically young women, unmarried, no kids, having great and fast success. At least that's what was portrayed. And that left me very frustrated because I was like, why, what's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this thing out? I am a very intelligent person. I have 2 degrees. Why can't I make this business thing work fast? I need it for my family. But I didn't give up. I kept on going. And as I started accomplishing more things in my journey, people started asking me about those things, like doing the TED Talk, publishing the book, being fearless, getting in front of people and speaking. And then because I had been in the game for so long, I understood, wow, I can monetize these things. If I know something, I can actually charge to share this knowledge. And that's how I build my business. So that's when things started turning around, and I really understood the concept behind marketing, making offers, pricing things. And at times, it felt so hard. Like, why can't I just read a book and go implement and things happen? You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like that at all for me. But yeah, that was the journey. And I did all of it while my kids were napping, and then eventually they started going to preschool. But it was, pockets of time whenever I could. And now looking back, I'm so proud of myself, because it was not easy. It really was not.
Well, it clearly shows all the hard work you put in. You did mention something about comparison, which
Mhm.
is what so many of us having new businesses experience and go through. Like we see people online and it's like, they're doing it. Why can't I do it?
Yeah.
So what is your advice for people having new businesses, or anybody in entrepreneurship? Like what is your advice to keep going basically?
All the cliches are true. So as much as they may piss you off, let's just say it that way, because it had pissed me off for so long. Like, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. All of them, collect all of them, whatever it is. They are true and they are cliches because for a reason, right? And um, I think once I understood that I had a lot of resentment for things not happening the way I wanted them to happen and for not happening as fast as I wanted them to happen, and I was able to release those expectations from myself, I was able to find some gratitude for the lessons and my pace and my journey, instead of comparing with others. So it was
Yeah.
very much so internal work. But it also happened because I allowed myself to be mentored. So to have people to acknowledge that there are people that know more than me, that have been at it longer than me, that could add something positive to my journey. Um, and also surrounding myself with people that were in a similar path, like-minded people, and understanding that, there's a season for everything. There's seasons for certain friends and certain people and certain mentors because that's where you're at, and it's okay to let go when once it doesn't fit anymore. I think understanding that this whole business journey, which I say motherhood, marriage, and the business journey, there are opportunities for you to get to know yourself. Like, embrace it as such. This isn't a chance for you to see what you're made of and to expose parts of you that had been in the dark for forever, that you probably would not meet had you stayed in your parents' house in your country for forever, right? I mean, I know I would not be the person that I am today doing the things that I am if I had stayed in Brazil. That's a fact. So I embrace all of the challenges, and I'm very, very grateful for the hard times for sure.
So wonderfully put. That is so important and such a wonderful reminder, because it's so easy to get lost. And as you said, you allowed yourself to be mentored and you found a mentor and a coach, and you yourself are a coach now. What would be your advice to people who are stuck or who don't know where to go? And if they are looking, like some people don't even know they need to be mentored. So how would you navigate that situation where you're like, okay, should I get mentored? Should I find a coach? How do I find a coach? And how to stay away from coaches, some coaches who are not going to help
Yeah.
your journey?
I'm so glad you said that because for a while there in my journey, I went on the other side of the spectrum where I refused help because I didn't have any money to invest anyways. I was trying to make the money. So it's like, I'm going to figure it out on my own. And then as I started making money and invested in people, then I got a little lost there where for anything, I needed somebody's advice and I wasn't trusting my own gut anymore. So it's about finding that balance. And I think there are lessons there too. Me going, off the deep end and investing thousands in programs that I probably didn't need taught me the lesson of you didn't need this. Awesome. So there's lessons in
Yeah.
everything. But I would say it all starts with being open to having a conversation. There are people around you, whoever you are, if you're stuck, that either are mentors or have mentors. So start seeking out, because this is what I tell people when they're like, how do you get into, doing a TED Talk? How do you get into doing anything in life? You see people doing it. So that means it's possible. And then you have to start researching and being willing to start a conversation and say, hey, how did you do this? I would love to talk to you. Um, because most people, especially in the entrepreneurial space, are willing to have those conversations because that's how we built our businesses. Was we were the ones that took that first step, right? So I would say externalize this. Don't just stay in your head because that's a very dangerous spot to be in because that's how you stay stuck, right? Start having these conversations, whether it be online, you could start there and then scheduling a Zoom with someone. And especially, if you are a business owner, you have to be willing to talk to people. My husband always says, because he has a job, he always says, you talk to more people in one day than I talk to in a month. And that's how it's supposed to be. So have more conversations, open yourself up, right, to understanding what you don't know.
Indeed, indeed. So, what inspired your TED Talk?
Oh my gosh. Well, definitely my immigration journey and my triplets. They're the main themes. And it was interesting because I got a little teary when I talked about my kids, obviously. I was not expecting, honestly, that during the actual live TED Talk, I would full blown cry when I talked about leaving Brazil. That was very unexpected. And the other unexpected thing was when we were crafting the talk, the curators were the ones that suggested that I play a little snippet of the Brazilian anthem, national anthem. And I was very taken aback. I was like, "Really? You would do that? You American would do that?" And so I felt so embraced, and that is something that I am extremely proud of because having lived here for 10 years now, sometimes I lose track, right, of my country. Obviously, my parents are still there, but it's in the day to day, I'm not thinking about the things that I would if I was down there. So having that, piece of reminder where the Brazilian flag shows up on the screen and the national anthem comes through, it's like that's something that you can never take away from me. So I am very proud of it.
That is very emotional, and that's the beauty of this country, right? They embrace every nationality, and it's the melting point of immigrants.
Yes.
So, how has your Brazilian heritage influenced your coaching style?
Oh my gosh, that's a tricky question. I guess you'd have to ask my clients. But I think at least the feedback that I get is that I'm very approachable, that I'm very, bubbly, energetic, that people, leave more excited and more empowered than they were before connecting and before working together. And I think it's really I am, dare I say, a very beautiful mix of adjusting as I go because that's very Brazilian. Like we'll work with what we got, and also pursuing it and not giving up. Because I think that's the spirit of the American dream. Really, is I am not going to give up, and here I have a chance of actually fulfilling this. Whereas, like I had said, if I had stayed in Brazil, it'd probably just stay a dream and not materialize. So I think it's this blend of liveliness and excitement for life, but also the grit, the seriousness of you're not going to take this dream away from me, and I'm going to make it happen.
So, what inspired your book, The Empowered Woman, the book and the podcast?
Yeah. Well, again, my journey, moving to America, having kids, but most importantly, the business. So the book is about me starting my business. I share a little bit my beginnings, but I talk about the struggle of starting something from the ground up, having, no connections here, especially. And I think that's the other piece of my story is if somebody that's not from here can do it, anyone can do it. Because when I was living in Brazil, my dad, being an entrepreneur himself, being very connected, I remember he offered me a few times, I could use one of my office spaces for you to have your own language school. So it would have been very easy for me to just have things done for me, built for me, and just carry on. But I didn't want that. I wanted to spread my wings and build something of my own. Similarly to when I started with network marketing, right? I had always had this in me of I'm not going to be tied up to anybody else's agendas or limitations. I need to create my own thing. So that's a lot what the book talks about. And I call it, the tagline is the ultimate roadmap to business success. And the roadmap really is you getting to know yourself, you overcoming those limitations that are in your mind. And a lot of them have to do with that resentment that I shared, um, hurts that you've, acquire along the way by people, whether it is directly or indirectly, you perceiving certain situations. And that is something that never goes away, regardless of your stage in the journey. The business building journey is you're going to have hard situations, hard conversations. And that's life, right? Not even in business, that's just life. And you're going to have to deal with them to move forward. So the book really handles the internal piece because that's the foundation for everything, anyway.
For our listeners, please grab a copy of her book, and I will leave the link in the show notes.
Thank you.
So tell us, what common obstacles do you see women facing when it comes to public speaking?
Hmm. I think the very first one is a lack of self confidence. I think all of us have certain area in our lives where something is just basic and we get to do that. And that's typically our zone of genius. And I see women not transferring that confidence into themselves when it comes to speaking. They don't realize that there are people out there that see them already as an authority, as an inspiration. People that are just hungry to hear what they have to say because they wish they were or they knew where they are at. And we always think we're not enough, regardless of what it is, how much we know, right? There's always that little thing in there that says, no, this is not that good. And I see this with my clients all the time. And I know that I have this in certain areas of my life as well, where I think people are judging me. They think I'm just a beginner. I have nothing to share, nothing to contribute. But everybody has to start somewhere. And so I love being that person in my client's life to say, you're doing great. You already have that presence and that personality and the skills and knowledge in this area. Let's serve people, and knowing that not everyone is going to be pleased and some people are not going to resonate with you, and that's okay. But I think that's the main thing. The other things that come up that are secondary are not understanding that there are opportunities out there that they need to, I don't know, go speak at a huge conference to be considered a speaker. One of the most transformative things that I experienced early on in my coaching was when one of my clients said, if you share on a podcast or you have a podcast, you are a speaker. And I love that. I was like, okay, then I am. It's so crazy how those little shifts in your mind can make such a difference to where at one moment you think something is impossible. And then the next one, it's like, oh, okay, I'm already doing it. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, we speak all the time. Who was to say, obviously there's accolades, there's titles for when people become professional speakers and get paid to speak and all of those things. But you can get started right now. I mean, there are so many different groups and different organizations that need speakers every week, every month. So there are opportunities and there are people out there wanting to hear what you have to say. But if you don't see yourself that way, then that's hard. So it starts with that inner thing and then understanding the logistics of it, that there are opportunities out there that It doesn't have to be a paid opportunity for it to be worth your while. There's so much ROI in speaking to the right audience with a very strong message that could lead to sales and say sales conversations. So I think those are the main obstacles.
Thank you so much for that insight. So, how do you help your clients overcome the imposter syndrome?
So I work with a lot of action taking. I don't focus a whole lot on the learning piece. And that's because the women that I work with, they are busy. They have built their business. They are, already established business owners. And so the focus is creating special action steps and holding them accountable to make it happen. Because here's another misconception, is that people think that speaking is a separate activity in their business. Oh, it's going to take so much of my time. I don't have time. I need to focus on marketing. I need to focus on, client fulfillment of the services or products or whatever it may be. But speaking is actually a part of marketing and a part of messaging. It happens simultaneously with the business. So I come in to remind them of that and help them see that if they are not clear on their messaging, then there is no business. Because if they're not, they say, a confused mind doesn't buy, but a confused mind doesn't sell either. So it starts with you. So I help them there with, and that's what's so important about having a mentor, is that the infamous cliche, again, that's why they are cliches. You can't see a label from inside the bottle. You need somebody from outside yourself, and typically somebody that's not in the industry. And that's why I love working with women from all kinds of different industries, because I need to understand. If I don't understand, your audience most likely won't, and your ideal client won't, right? So reducing things to like third grade level, whatever they say, that it's easy for people to understand. I love reflecting things back. And it's in that process that I get amazed at my clients and the work that they do. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the world needs to hear this. And that helps with the whole imposter syndrome too, because here I am, a layperson, compared to them. And I'm like amazed. I'm like, let's shout it from the rooftops. They feel encouraged to get on out there and share more. So it starts with the message itself. Then we go through the mindset piece, because then they actually have to go and deliver it, and it's scary. And after they deliver it, the talks, the first few times, whether they're seasoned speakers or not, because we work with a very specific format, sometimes they're not used to it. They come back and they're like, I had amazing feedback, but I'm overanalyzing and I'm thinking about all the things I did wrong. And I'm like, yes, that's totally normal, but just remember, you're going to do it again. You're not going to stop. So it's only going to get better the more you do it. So that's how I usually work with them.
Lovely. So, how do you help women balance authenticity with professionalism?
That's a great question. I think it's all a matter of the different experiences that they've had in their lives. And that's why I work one-on-one with clients. It's very custom work to where they are at. And to be clear, not everybody that starts working with me is at a point or even desires getting on large stages. Some of them are just getting more comfortable networking more and, practicing their elevator pitch or doing more podcast interviews. I had one of my clients be on your podcast. That's where she was at when she came to me. She's like, I just published a book and I don't know what to do with it. And I said, well, we need to get you out there. So getting her on podcasts was the very first step. So I think the authenticity piece is, let's start where you are at. Where else would you start? And it's okay. Back to the comparison. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible professional if you're not at the top, because nobody starts there, and you've got to start somewhere. And whatever it is that you can do as an entrepreneur, especially to get visibility, then let's do that. I always say something is better than nothing, but once you're doing something consistently, let's get strategic about it. Let's get intentional, but you have to start and get yourself out there. So it's just, honoring your stage, honoring where you are, and also getting feedback from your audience, being open to that feedback. And it's so amazing that I work with this, because that's what I've had to deal with my entire life, is being comfortable getting constructive feedback. There's a meme I've seen floating around. I'd love your feedback, but only if it's compliments. That's how, eh, I think different personalities operate different ways. Some people love just tell me like it is, like don't sugarcoat it. I've been the one of like sugarcoat it as much as you want. I don't want you to tell me that I suck. But that's been part of my coaching too, is helping women understand that we get better when people tell us what we can do better. So
Indeed. Tell us a little bit about your story to stage method.
yes, so that's the name of my 101 program. It's a 4-month program, and we go through it in 3 different stages. The main goal of the program is turning your story into a powerful keynote, a powerful signature talk, um, finding a way to deliver it with confidence that's authentic to you. So we work on the stage presence as well. And then also finding opportunities to deliver that. So in terms of the 3 stages, we start with the talk. So what is that message? What are the stories you're going to tell? What are the main lessons that you're going to share? So we map out that outline, the entire talk. Then I have you record yourself, and we analyze it together, and I give you my feedback. So that's a scary portion of the program for many people, because they don't want to see themselves, they don't want to hear themselves, they get afraid of me seeing it, right? So it's the warming up process of, well, a lot more people other than me are going to have to see this, right? So let's just pull the band-aid off, rip the band-aid off. And it's an amazing process too, to see them recognizing their amazingness after they're done recording themselves. And then after that, we start looking for opportunities. And so that's the main thing that people are concerned when they're talking to me. You can guarantee that I will find opportunities within 4 months? And I'm like, yes, 4 months is a long time. And I always say it's the RAS, reticular activating system. Whenever you want to get pregnant, all of a sudden everybody's pregnant around you, right? You're looking into buying a red car, all the cars are red. It's the same thing with speaking. Because you've committed and you've decided, I want to do this, opportunities are going to pop up. So it's not that I have this magic wand and all of a sudden we're going to find opportunities. Obviously, there's strategy and we're going to look into those things, but things will start coming up. And now you are going to be prepared to say yes. So that's also part of the story to stage program.
Lovely. Tell us about your balance in life. How do you balance being a mom to triplets, being an author, speaker, coach, TED Talk? Um, so tell us all about your,
Oh
like,
my
how do you
gosh.
balance everything?
I have seen so many quotes that say there is no such thing as balance. It's like integration or whatever, because it's different seasons for different things. I'm not perfect. I obviously mess up at work. There are things that I miss, and there are things that I miss when it comes to my kids. I remember a few months ago, they had picture day. I had it on my calendar. We talked about it all week. We talked about it the night before, and I completely forgot, and they forgot it too. So they were wearing like t-shirts. My daughter had a weird like Star Wars t-shirt and whatever. We didn't do any hairstyles. Like I felt like a trash mom. So there are those days where I forget everything, or that I forget that I had a call with somebody and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I triple booked myself, and now I get this Calendly reminder. Like it's not personal, literally. So I think the elusive balance is really giving myself grace, learning from the mistakes, um, you know, seeing those moments as opportunities. I can do better next time. I really need to pay attention to this. I actually had a sales call not too long ago where I typically ask people for a lot of information for me to do some research before we meet. And that was the one call that I didn't look thoroughly into the answers, and I really needed to have. And it was not a pleasant experience. I felt so incompetent, to be honest. The person was very graceful, but it became clear that I hadn't done my homework. So I mess up, and that sat with me for weeks. But I'm learning to give myself grace and to see this is a sign that I really need to be more prepared and I need to pay attention to these things. So I think that's part of it too, is um, paying attention to those moments and using that as insight to do better.
Thank you so much for that. It's easy to just feel so overwhelmed and then be hard on ourselves. And it's so important to remember to give ourselves grace. So
Yes.
thank you for that reminder. If somebody wants to work with you, what would be the best way to get in touch with you? What would be the best method to work with you?
Yeah. So I love getting on a one-on-one call. I call it a story to stage evaluation, where I get to know you and understand where you are in your speaking journey. And like I said, I serve women at different stages, whether it be you've never spoken before, you've done a little bit, or you've done a lot and you want to take it to the next level. Um, you can find that on my website. So if you go to martaspirk.com, you will find buttons on there to book a time on my calendar for a 30-minute chat. I also have a page called Work With Me where I talk a little bit about the Story to Stage program, but it really starts with a call where you tell me a little bit about you and then I share more about how I can support if it's a fit.
Lovely. For our listeners, I will have all that information in the show notes. Before we wrap up, can you please leave us with a couple nuggets of advice for someone who is an immigrant woman in the US trying to start a business, or somebody who's already in the business and is feeling stuck? What would be your advice?
I would say it's always going back to your heart and where it is. Because if you have a desire, it's not there randomly, it's there for a reason, especially if you went through the trouble of moving to a different country. That's part of your journey. And, recently I actually started a separate journey because, why not start different adventures? I started training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu because I enrolled my kids and then I got super involved and I competed recently, which was a huge challenge and a lot of mindset work because especially because I didn't win in my first competition and that was devastating. And somebody told me, one of my colleagues at the gym, she said, well, you beat everybody on the couch. And I was like, man, that's so cool. It's true. Not that it is a
Yeah.
matter of, competition, obviously in that context, it is competition, but it's like if you have gone through the trouble of doing something as scary as leaving your country, you're already doing amazing because it's not easy. So, what's opening up a business? What's having a sales conversation? Like, we've done hard things. So, we can handle rejection and refunds and failed launches, whatever it may be. Like, we've done one of the hardest things that some people will never ever ever put themselves through. So just remember that and keep on going.
That's amazing advice. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being here and sharing your expertise and your experience with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting.
Thank you. As we wrap up today's inspiring conversation, remember that every business has a unique story waiting to be told through their digital presence. If you're ready to share your story and build your brand through a website that truly represents you, I'd love to help. As someone who specializes in crafting beautiful and functional websites on WordPress and Squarespace, I understand that your website is more than just a digital space. It's the heart of your brand's story. You can find me at jenningstechcorner.com to learn more about how we can bring your vision to life. This is Anisha Jennings reminding you that sometimes the most powerful stories are told one web page at a time. Until next time.